DJ LeRoy.
NightWatchman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. 'Tis the season.
It is indeed. And especially, you know what? I heard that, Albany is popping, alive and popping, especially as it relates to legal cannabis. So I'm really, really curious. I got to give them major props for making sure that it did not lose the public's conscience, that it is actually happening. And you know what? We even have discussions about stuff happening on 125.
Absolutely.
Okay,
so let's bring out our esteemed guests. Our first guest I'd like to introduce is New York State's Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes.
Yes. Hey, Majority Leader, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Nice to see you all. And it's a great day to be on this side.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Buffalo in the house. And as a matter of fact, a NightWatchman, I have to actually point out. So you have the Jets, you have the Giants, who ain't doing squat, but you got the Bills, baby. Okay,
that's right.
There you go.
And by the way, the Bills are the only team that actually plays in the state of New York.
No, you didn't.
It's true. I believe the other guys play somewhere in like Jersey or something. Let's be honest, I am born and raised into a family that love football, so I love football, and I am a big Bills fan. But when they're not playing the Bills, I'm a Jets fan or a Giants fan.
All right. Okay. You have your priorities straight. Absolutely.
And Majority Leader, I have to say now, okay. Now, is it the 5th time in the Super Bowl the charm?
It should be. Absolutely.
Okay.
If you don't go there, you can't get the charm. So you got to go.
Very nice. So NightWatchman, who else we got?
Esther LeLievre is a cannabis educator. I only met her about a week ago, but I was so impressed with her knowledge of what's going on, not just in general, but also in the communities in New York. And I thought that she would give us a valuable perspective. And she's actually teaching cannabis education in New York City public schools, which is I think is phenomenal. So Esther, welcome to Soul Lounge Primetime.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm gonna leave Majority Leader Peoples-Stokes because I'm a Jets fan.
Now, Esther, can you say 1969? Like, come on.
I know, but I feel like I gotta be rooting for the underdogs a little bit.
I hear you.
That's part of being a New Yorker a little bit.
I'm just glad that this year we have some action in, we have reasons to be hopeful about New York football in general. So
Indeed.
So last and certainly not least, we have Damian Fagon, who is the Chief Social Equity Officer for the Office of Cannabis Management. And there he is.
All right.
Damian.
And I understand, NightWatchman, was that guy not a grower upstate?
He was a farmer for sure, yeah.
There you go.
That's the one thing. Every day I'm in the office, typing up reports, looking at Excel spreadsheets. I just look off in the distance and remember I used to farm. What happened?
Exactly. Oh man,
you got called to a higher calling.
Yeah, exactly. So NightWatchman, I normally start it off popping and whatnot, but this time this is special. I'm going to let you do that. Go ahead.
So I would like for us to start by talking a little bit about what has been accomplished so far by the Office of Cannabis Management and the Cannabis Control Board, and just in general what the New York State legislature and executive branch have actually gotten together on the issue of rolling out legal cannabis. So I want to start with Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, and if you can just kind of give us a little arc of this whole progress toward legal cannabis here in New York.
Well, good morning. I want to thank you all for having me here. It's a pleasure to share this time with you. And honestly, it was a work in labor. I mean, it took 8 years to literally to agree with me that this was something that needed to happen.
Wow.
You know, honor Senator Liz Krueger too, because she's the person who sponsored it in the Senate. And then once we did finally get it to the floor, it took 7 hours of debate.
Wow.
But it was worth every minute to get this done. It happened in March. We didn't get a Office of Cannabis Management in place until Kathy Hochul was sworn in as governor. And that's really sad because we could have got started earlier. If not, you know, the other folks would not have been so interested in just simply playing politics. But we moved past that, and I am impressed with who she has selected. She asked me for my opinion. I gave it to her. I told her I thought Chris Alexander would be a great person to be the executive director, given that he had spent a lot of time working with me and Senator Krueger on putting the legislation together. He's also worked in the industry for a while, and he's a very sharp young man and a skilled attorney. I thought he would be the best person, and I still believe I made that right call because I do fabulous job. I think the Office of Cannabis Management's Control Board is doing a great job as well. Tremaine Wright was the chair of the caucus, Black Caucus, doing a lot of negotiations. So she really understood the legislation. I think there's some glitches that we probably are going to need to go back and make some tweaks to it to change things. But overall, the intent of the legislation is working towards that direction. The role of the chief equity officer we thought was a very important one that had to be there because, you know, you often say you want to do equity, but if you don't have a person that just focuses on that, you may get lost per se. So the fact that we were able to have that position in place and have a advisory board that will advise them on how the resources of the 40% state revenue will be spent in the communities that have been disenfranchised is critically important. And by the way, I heard your next guest and the chief equity officer on your show, and you should be the chief equity officer. And so I had to really move some things around. You can find out where he lived, what was his phone number. And you know what? I give all the glory to God because I know that everything is in divine order, and I think we're going the right direction. Will we have to do some tweaks along the way? Yes, we will. But right now, I'm grateful about where we're going.
Beautiful. Oh man. So NightWatchman, you just knew whatnot that having the majority leader on here, we want to seriously set this bad boy off.
Of course. I mean, listen, you know, I want to make sure that this was also an opportunity for us to just acknowledge the work that she's done. And again, 8 years of work on this thing. And, you know, it really took a village to get this thing done. And as I said before we started this broadcast, there were a lot of people and certainly a lot of Black women who stood up and stood for an equitable law being passed. And I want to mention Cassandra Frederiques and Regina Smith and Gia Moran and Mary Pryor and there's so many people along the way. And yes.
Yes.
And if I left anybody out, we're acknowledging you because there was a general will that we were not going to let this pass by and have happened what happened in the other states. And we still have to, you know, we're still not there yet, but we have accomplished more in New York, I think, than any other state has done so far in terms of having an equitable program. So I want to pass this over to Damian, who as a chief social equity officer has a really boots on the ground view about how this thing has been rolling out, you know, from the Office of Cannabis Management.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the intro, and thank you, Majority Leader, for all your work on this. I think, you know, what jumped out to me when she said 8 years, you know, like that's how serious we take this responsibility in the office. The amount of work and activism and resistance and strategy that went to even getting, you know, Black and brown communities this opportunity. Like I have such a deep respect for that work. And so, you know, when I'm in the office and we're working on these things, like people are so dedicated to this mission in our office, and the ones that actually want to come here and put in the time and the effort to continue this work is they recognize all of that. A lot of them come from those communities. You know, Chris was, you know, at Drug Policy Alliance. He's been fighting for this for like almost a decade at this point. And, you know, the one thing I'll say about what's, you know, what for people on the outside looking in, you know, a year ago, Chris probably had 5 staff members at OCM.
Wow.
They weren't doing they couldn't do anything. Like everyone's thinking like, oh, they're gonna come out with regs in spring, they're gonna do this, they're gonna do that. By January, maybe they had 10, you know. And so in under a year, you know, the agency's gone from, you know, Chris with 5 people to what today we have about 155, 160 staff spread out over, you know, New York City, Albany, and soon Buffalo will have an office there. And that slow growth of an office, you know, every month we were adding like 30 new employees. We had to train them. A lot of them didn't have cannabis experience. We got to teach them cannabis. We got to teach them all these different complicated concepts. We got to set up workflows. Like Chris stood up an agency in a year, like an entire independent autonomous agency that governs a brand new industry that no one's ever doing, things that no one's ever done before. And I really feel like that gets lost because Chris is so talented in terms of like writing policy and writing legislation. Like he's managing the hell out of that agency. He's got inspired. He's got people begging to come work at his agency. We're all working there like it's a startup too. Like people are putting a lot of sweat equity and time and effort to see this thing through. And they're trying things that haven't been done before. Card has never been done before. Like there's no program that we saw out in the world. We're like, let's do that. That worked. Like this should work. Look at this.
Wow. I want to ask you to just explain CARD for listeners who might not know what that stands for.
Yeah, Conditional Adult Use Retail Dispensary.
Wow.
Innovative license type and program that seeks to, you know, really put people who are justice impacted and nonprofits who do justice work at the center of the cannabis industry with the first 175 retail dispensaries. And we did that in partnership with DASNY, who are, you know, still scouring the state for leases and raising money to fund that initiative. But man, no state has ever attempted that, to put people who are arrested for weed as the first ones to sell it in their state. No one even like that wasn't a priority for anybody else until it came to New York.
Nice.
That's because of the you know, the legacy and inspiration of people like the majority leader that continues.
Excellent.
By the way, because it is the first time it's ever happened, we're actually being sued because of that. And so it's like Buffalo don't have an opportunity yet to have a dispensary because there's a court case.
Wow.
And people are challenging that we want to focus on New Yorkers first. And I think it's so sad because the case is coming out of Michigan. What they should be doing is challenging those states that did not set up a priority for the folks who have justice impact. That's what they should be challenging, not the state that is trying to do it right for its people. And maybe, you know, there's 170 something licenses, as Damian said. Maybe you can be 152, but that doesn't mean you have to be first. And you shouldn't be challenging the office's opportunity to select who they would like to select to be first. We'll win the case. I've had conversations with the Attorney General, the People's Attorney. She's working on it for us. We'll win that.
Beautiful.
There'll be more because everybody wants access to this industry.
And everybody wants to be in New York.
Yeah, but nobody was raising their hand to go to jail.
That part,
yes, absolutely.
Well, Esther, please, you have to tell the curriculum, doing the teaching in terms of cannabis education in the school. How did that come about?
So I was inspired by the people in this call. Actually, Damian Fagon was a part of our first parent workshop when we were doing this before he came
I'm everywhere.
Yeah, he was nervous. He was like, "Wait, you talking to parents about what kind of parents?" I was like, "High schoolers." He's like, "What high schoolers?" Like the questions were like, "Wait, like freshman high schoolers? Like, are we? Wait, let's roll back. What is happening?" And I was inspired by the people on this call and the other people who advocated for 8 years. Christopher Alexander's from the same neighborhood I was in. And I saw a Facebook post that he did 2 years ago before he was in the OCM. And that's, I, piggyback on Damian talking about that, because I was watching Christopher Alexander doing this work in my community way before he was part of OCM or in his position. So I remember his 420 events telling us how to prepare, how to get involved, what things we need to do to get ready for this industry to roll out. My inspiration wasn't just me, it's actually a party of three. Leo Jimenez and Jessica Naissant, we just came together and we just started with a freshman class of like talking about cannabis, because in order for this to fully develop the way we needed to, we need the education part. So before OCM and all those things, we was like, we're not gonna wait, we're gonna just start it, and just started boots on the ground. And when I mean boots in the ground, we're in the NYCHA buildings doing these workshops. We're in senior homes. We're working with political leaders. Huge shout out to Senator Sanders' office, Marvin, Assemblyperson Anderson's office, even Senator Prasad, Farrah Lewis, Stephanie Zinnerman. They opened their districts for us to have these conversations and to push the educational part. And I've learned so much just from talking to the children that that's what we expanded. We started with schools and we was like, we have to do more work. We have to be in the community. We need them to buy in to the card applicants. That was another thing. We need them to buy in. We need them to support them. We need to be advocating for them on all fronts. It can't just be everyone in the political world holding all the weight. We need to talk to community boards. We did a workshop with Community Board 8 and Stephanie Zimmerman, and we were explaining what their roles are, how to support the card applicants, how to support this industry. And the reality is that these kids might want to work in the cannabis industry. And the majority of them were telling us that. They were coming up with so much new ideas. I couldn't believe it. They was like, well, don't they need a cyber tech team to make sure that these are 13-year-olds. I was like, hey, let me write this down. And then from there, Damian did an amazing job of helping us talk to the parents. Cultivate Community Foundation, we just expanded. We just, explaining farming, explaining the backgrounds. And, I never got to say a formal thank you, Damian, but thank you, because those parents are now so opened up with their kids of like, how do we get our kids into this industry? What schools are available? And we were able to partner up with LIM College, figuring out ways and entries for our kids to get in it, but also now working with like Department of Labor and all these different departments of getting the resources, because too many oftentimes our community's like, oh, I don't know this information. I don't know where it is. So now I'm meeting you in your apartment building. Now you can't say nothing. I'm at your home. You can't say nothing. I'm at your kid's school. What you gonna say now? Like Damian knows I've cut down all those arguments. I tell them, hey, I don't know where this is. Check the website. This is me at every meet. Check OCM's website. It's there. I do not try to reinvent the wheel. I get all their printouts. I know. And I hand them out. And I said, nobody can say we're on the middle of the Bronx at parades in the middle of the street. Like, you cannot say we're not in your communities.
Yeah. And Esther, please tell me this, because as we certainly do know, there are a lot of misconceptions. Do you hear, let's say, some pushback that, hey, it's a gateway drug? This will starting this will then lead to other expansions into other areas, or you know what? There'll be dealers right outside schools. We don't want that. Tell me some of the crazy questions you've heard.
I was starting boots on the ground in Long Island, so that was already, the parent coalition's a little strong and wrong out there sometimes. We don't try to combat people. We give them the science and we give them the education. There's a lot of arguments most people can't have with me. I'm a mom of a 15-year-old boy. In addition, I'm a cancer patient survivor. Jessica and Sons is a biochemist and biologist. Leo is from Colombia. So when they try to come with like, oh, what about this? I just hit them with facts. Because we understand that everyone's not going to want this to happen. It's here already, and that's what we tell them. But you need to respect the people that got arrested and went through this process to make this industry happy and with all the money that they're getting. And we support OCM. We support all the politicians. We advocate for them too, and how to support them in this process. But some of the questions is like, this is a gateway drugs. You can't say this is medicine. You can't say this. And, you know, I always give an example. I was a cancer patient at 19, a senior, you know, freshman in college. You can't tell me how cannabis was effective for me as a cancer patient. And most of the time that shut people down. But in addition to that, we tell them the work that we're doing. You know, I know they don't have an educational infrastructure, but we say, hey, we're in the schools. So what do you want to know about the schools? Because if you're not in it, you can't really say what's happening unless you're in it.
You gotcha. You know what I'm a little curious about? Okay, so one of the serious people in talk on the federal level who was you say conservative, but yet once he left his position as Speaker of the House, you know, he actually went into the industry, and I'm talking about John Boehner. So now, upstate New York, which might be a little bit more red, have we seen some of those repubs embrace the cannabis industry for their counties? Majority Leader, tell me.
Kind of how you see people illegally setting up shops all over the New York City. They're doing it all over here too.
Wow.
I don't mean just Buffalo. I mean in suburban communities, in rural communities, there's a smoke shop set up illegally somewhere. So, you know, they suggested it's a gateway drug and they don't want to have access to it in their communities. But these people don't even have license yet, and they are open and illegally doing business. And so John Boehner is not the only one that understands this is about money. I want to mention this. I really want to honor the work that Esther has been doing, because I think education is critical here. The plan has been so stigmatized. It's got to be a huge effort to go into destigmatizing it. And because of that, we actually have put education into the legislation. So eventually there will be resources that will go directly towards the kind of education that Esther is talking about on a broader scale. And so I hope that she's, you know, geared herself up to be actually maybe one of the people who submits an RFP to Chris and Fabian.
Oh, I'm geared. I've been geared.
The other thing I want to mention is that, and I'm not sure exactly how this works, Damian could probably explain it better.
No, yeah, I'm already thinking of some
stuff. The governor actually gave money to SUNY specifically for the purpose of education. And I did those sort of education things around my community from the time I introduced the legislation, and we still do it. And one of the gentlemen who participated in the beginning is now been recruited to be a vendor at the Super Bowl. And
wow,
consumption park, and their NFL experience will have a consumption park. And to be honest, if you watch the Super Bowl, which I know many of us will, you will see a commercial that advertises cannabis.
Interesting. Wow.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I'd like to jump in and just let's talk about the historic event that's happening on December 29th, when we're actually going to have the first legal dispensary open up. And I believe that is initially it was announced for 125th Street, but the last thing I saw is that it's happening actually downtown.
Housing
works.
So Damian, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and man, I'm pretty exhausted because it's all we've been working on for the last like 2 weeks now at this point. But the office is starting to freak out. We're starting to get real excited because just yesterday, the first transaction of a retail dispensary paying a farmer for their product happened.
All right.
And so
yes,
you gotta understand the amount of things that have to be in place for that money to exchange hands legally. Like the payment processor, the contract, the regulations, the guidance, like all these things had to be in place, like a domino set, for that payment to go across from one business to the other, one licensed business to the other. And yeah, we're super excited. Next Thursday, we're going to see the first legal sale of cannabis happen on Broadway and Astor Place in Lower Manhattan. And that'll be done by Housing Works, a legacy, old, long-standing nonprofit that's been doing amazing work with the homeless community, which the HIV/AIDS community, and with people returning from prison. And I think what's still so exciting to me about this concept with this nonprofit, and a huge shout out to the folks on the policy team, including Axel, who first saw the opportunity with nonprofits to bring them into this space. You go to Housing Works dispensary, you buy $100 worth of pre-rolls, you're supporting a family farm upstate. Your money's going to the community reinvestment for communities disproportionately impacted by prohibition. It's going to schools, it's going to drug rehabilitation, and it's going back to that nonprofit to keep doing the work that they've been doing in the community. So every dollar you spend in these nonprofits and these dispensaries is making New York a better state. And it's circulating in our economy. It's reinvesting in our communities, and it's helping people. And I just think that is just like the coolest way to smoke weed. Like there's just nothing more encouraging, and that you're helping people like that. I love it.
Love it. And you know what? I want to harken back on education again, Esther, because and Damian, certainly you remember this when we were doing some of those early workshops there at at HBA. They said one of the biggest pushbacks was coming from the faith community. Has there been any attempt to educate, let's say, the clergy about the benefits of cannabis?
Yes. So we did a 50 pastor workshop in Stephanie Zinnerman's district, right in Bed-Stuy in a community center. Shout out to Pastor Bird. And in addition, shout out to Air Wellness, because Kari Edwards saw what we were doing. They're not in New York. They're a medical cannabis company, and piggyback on how do we support you doing the social impact in New York. And since we connected, it's been great. It's been amazing. Like, we've been able to see 500 to 1,000 seniors in a week.
Nice.
Which is robust selections, but it's been good. We've been able to see some of the work we were able to do. We were actually at Angela Yee Day giving out back to school backpacks, about 600-700. Brooklyn DA's office gave us books because we want to keep the education on all factors. So the clergy has been amazing. Surprisingly, it's funny. After we did that workshop, we actually saw one of the pastors walk to the On the Revel event that they had in August. And I was like, Pastor? And she said, look, I was like, Pastor, is that you? She wasn't in a hoodie. She wasn't cloaking herself. And she said the biggest thing that she took away from our educational workshop is to educate herself. So she said, in order for me to educate myself and to minister better. Because we give them that part of, we're going to have people coming out of jail. We're going to have families that are going to be reconnected. There's social service work and community work that we need to support while this industry is growing out. And she said, in order for me to minister better, I need to educate myself on how I can support my ministry. And that was enough for me.
Got you. Perfect. Yes. And what I want to throw out there, okay, so let's say we have locations identified. And Damian, we know that sometimes there can be pushback from certain constituencies about a location.
Yeah.
Is the Office of Cannabis Management set on that location, or will they entertain, let's say, ideas for possible different location?
Yeah, we want to work with communities that are going to see these businesses, launched inside of them. Like the businesses don't work if the community doesn't buy into them. And I just want to give an example of how we run into problems, early in the cannabis industry, early in the legal rollout. So, there's a municipality upstate that, was sending us paperwork about, they want to have all the dispensaries in this one industrial part of the city. And, we were, obviously, the cannabis law says that, they can't do that if they opt in. But in the conversations with them, I was talking to them about, like, we're starting with social equity. And so by starting with social equity, guess who's going to be most impacted by the stigma forcing them to start their businesses in the industrial zone? And so then once the stigma fades and people see that it's a normal industry, that it benefits the community, that it benefits the tax revenue of the city and overall quality of life, guess who now gets the dispensaries downtown in the business?
Right.
By going first, we're also exposing our licensees to the challenges of that stigma and communities who are afraid of cannabis. And so, I was trying to communicate that because, we don't want a situation where all of our Black and brown dispensaries are in the industrial zone, and then all the big brands are in the ones with the heavy foot traffic. And so, we're going to do better at reaching out to community boards and local municipalities about, incorporating their feedback into where these businesses are located. We don't want to start them and immediately be in this oppositional relationship, especially because it puts our licensees, our entrepreneurs at risk.
Right.
How are they going to succeed as a business if the local community is protesting outside? It has to be a conversation, but people got to recognize that, LA County still doesn't have dispensaries 6 years later.
What?
Yes, LA County does not have dispensaries. A lot of the municipalities in Los Angeles don't have dispensaries because the community has never wanted them. That didn't stop the community from smoking weed. They still smoke weed.
Yes.
Same way as everybody else. And so when you wonder, why is California's black market still so huge? It's because communities don't want legal stores to sell in their neighborhoods. They want to be able to call the guy who brings it behind the back door. They want to, you know what I mean? It's just an unsustainable marketplace. It will ultimately collapse like a house of cards if we don't allow these legal stores to operate in our neighborhoods, because we all smoke weed. But we got to do better. We got to listen better to these communities.
Gotcha.
Now, Damian, I noticed that delivery is also going to be an option for these dispensaries. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that was really something we've been working on as a contingency plan for a few months now, just in case the brick and mortars weren't up. And the more we talked about it, the more we actually just liked it for them to start. Period, because they can find a delivery space in the outer borough for very low overhead and start building their website, building their tech stack, building their delivery system, building their brand, hiring people, onboarding people, and making money without the overhead rent, $200,000, $500,000 a year of a brick and mortar location. And so they can start making that money before we put them into the brick and mortar location with the high overhead. And so, and they can also, deliver all over the city. Someone in the South Bronx can deliver to all 5 boroughs.
Wow, nice.
If they've got great weed, they have access to millions of potential customers. So increasingly, it does seem like a really empowering thing for entrepreneurs who know cannabis to succeed, because they can actually access all of the the high income earning people in Lower Manhattan who want to buy great weed, the people in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, all from the Hunts Point. Wow, is looking like it's going to be a really important one for these dispensaries.
And back up, Damian. So Hunts Point is being proposed as a not just dispensary, but also a grow facility.
I mean, the Hunts Point, a lot of people are talking about the South Bronx and how the South Bronx can play a role in the supply chain that we're building. Right now, the South Bronx, I've worked in the Hunts Point for over a year with the whole program, and it's a distribution hub for the rest of the city.
Right.
All of our food, all of our produce, all of our packages. Amazon's got a bunch of stuff up there, like Go Fresh, all that stuff. So there's a lot of trucks coming in and out. There's a lot of transportation. It's a transportation hub.
Gotcha.
But I think what people need to understand is that you see the buildings in the Hunts Point, they're 100-year-old distribution warehouses. That's still $20 a square foot for that warehouse. That's still $1 million a year warehouse because of its proximity to Manhattan. And so the real estate cost challenges associated with building anything cannabis related up there are very real. And so one of the ways we're looking at the South Bronx and Hunts Point in particular is by talking to Dashida Dawson and talking to the city of New York. What real estate does the city have access to up there that we can help, leverage to help the community up there access this opportunity? And so that's when we're talking about real estate, we're talking about city owned, maybe even state owned real estate that we can provide to entrepreneurs, or we can leverage to help entrepreneurs access the industry.
Gotcha. And majority leader, I'm thinking about something. So let's say we have the legal market, right? It's about to unfold, but we still have as I said, illicit market still out there.
We
should
prefer the term legacy.
I was going to say illicit. But Majority Leader, tell me, what should be done? Should enforcement really come down hard? What?
Well, it should come down hard, but it should not criminalize people all over again.
Okay.
It should say you need to follow the laws of the state of New York. And so once the legal stores are open, by the way, it's going to be very hard to enforce the fact that they're doing this illegally until stores are open, because it's a legal product.
Right.
And in hindsight, maybe we should have did regulation before we made it legal, but that wouldn't have worked in New York State. It didn't work anywhere else. So people are just going to have to be patient with us as we move through this. I believe that Chris and his team are putting together some potential ways that we can look at some new legislation in the upcoming year to deal with these places that are selling the illegal weed. Well, I'm going to call it the gray market. Yeah. There are a lot of people who have other state licenses that are selling. They have license to sell lotteries. They have license to sell beer. All that's in jeopardy.
Wow.
And I personally think that landlords who allow people to open up smoke shops in their building, we should go after them. Go after the landlord, because they're allowing that to happen in their building. And it's a legal product, but it's an illegal process that they're using.
Gotcha.
So and go to landlords, they'll be the ones to help us shut this down. But you got to get the stores open before you can even, it's not going to go away. Just like I don't think the illicit market will go away once stores open. It's going to take time for that to happen. By the way, people thought that, once lottery became legal, that folks were going to stop selling numbers on the street. You can go to almost any bar in the Black community and play a number.
That's true. That is so true.
One thing I can say, to piggyback, I was part of a blue room discussion about enforcement, and they're doing a 3-prong approach, which is facilitate, rehabilitate, and enforcement. Right. So they're going to, DeCedar Dawson's doing an amazing job of where they're going to do cease and desist, get those people to actually do the legal route so that they can infuse them. And then afterwards, if those 2 actions don't happen, then they're doing enforcement. So some of the rollout plans that are happening that I was access to is a real holistic approach of like, we're going to give you the opportunity to do this right and come out. And if not, enforcement is going to happen, and they're working with about 3 to 10 state agencies to hit it on all sides of this issue with the gray. I call them the gray market because not everyone is part of the legacy who built this industry. True. And that's some of these people, the conversations we have at these community boards and these community centers is understanding the differences, because with some of these illicit markets, they're selling K2 and spice to our kids, and that's not okay.
Yeah. So, I want to double down on that, because there's ways of doing this public policy and the smart ways that don't recycle the same things we tried before. And an example of that is, I talked to Lila Hunt, is our director of campaigns at OCM, and we could spend a couple $1 million putting ads on the subways telling you that these gray market stores have untested, unsafe product, make you sick. You're funding, gangs. We could do this marketing campaign for a couple $1 million and wipe out half their revenue, because they can't advertise. They can't advertise. Right. They have no ability to actually control the narrative. We can do whatever we want with the narrative. We could put commercials on TV. We could do all these things for less money than it would cost to arrest people. Do you know what I mean? We don't have to start busting up shops. We can just educate consumers. We can put stickers on top of our store, be like, scan the UR code here to find out if it's a legal shop or not. That's got tested product.
That's a great idea.
Tested product. It's actually more affordable to the state, and there's less harm overall in the long term.
And I want to just agree with that
approach. Much better approach.
I want to agree with that, because that's what we do when we educate people. We tell them the things to look for. We tell them to check the website of the OCM and find legal medical stores and find legal stores or CBD stores. We tell them, hey, this is how you check. Even during Halloween, we were in the Bronx warning parents of making sure that you're getting the right candy. Smell it, check it, make sure it's legit candy, because we have false packaging, and we bring all those packagings to our tablings. We show them what legal product looks like, because we've been able to work with Air Wellness and different organizations where they gave us dummy products so that people visually see what this really is supposed to look like. Because a lot of us in our neighborhoods don't know what a real dispensary is, don't know what the real products look. So they're assuming these are all. I had an argument with a vet and he was like, no, this is a legal shop. I'm telling you, I saw it. And I'm like, I know visually. And then when I showed him, he's like, wow, this ain't real. He got 2 stores. And I was like, and that's what you're supporting, because when you're supporting, those tax revenues are not coming back to us. Where are they going? Brother man on the 5th floor ain't putting this money back to fixing the streets or the lights in your neighborhood. So I advocate for making sure people focus on going to the real shops, because the tax revenues are important. The investment back in our communities is going to be huge. As a person that deals with education and understanding where we need those helps in this area.
By the way, this is still America, and it's still a very capitalistic society we live in.
That's true.
People are going to take advantage of an opportunity to make money, and believe me, they are making a lot of money. But as Damian said, and as Esther was saying, we got to be smart about how we remove them out of this industry to make sure that we get the investment that returns back to our communities. And I think that's the direction we're going.
Damian, I've got a question for you. I also want to talk about the other aspect, because there's different aspects to the legacy market. And one of them, and I know that you started interacting with them even before you came aboard with OCM, are the legacy growers. And I know that there are legacy growers here in New York State that are actively planning to transition their businesses into illegal businesses. So can you tell us a little bit about how that process is going?
Yeah, it's going great. Our first attempt to start bringing them into the space is through this cannabis compliance training and mentorship program. So when we posted this application about a month and a half ago, I had no idea what to expect. We did a lot of outreach as an office with our external team, Jason Salmon, myself, a lot of folks on the equity team, Tabitha Robinson. We had been traveling all over the state, Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, Brooklyn, the Bronx, meeting with legacy growers, informing them that we need their genetics, we need their talents, we need all their skill sets in the legal industry, and building trust, building community with them. And so when we posted that application, we got 650 applications from some of the best growers across the state. And so, we have an objective scoring criteria that sort of looked at their narrative, like college essays, looked at the submissions and scored them based on, the level of their expertise in growing cannabis. So mentioning, higher, skilled, like, CO2 machines or multiple genetics or growing hydro, like these things that they talked about in their applications actually, started to push the more experienced operators to the top. And so we just finished interviewing 250 people this week. My team did in Albany. And we're going to start that mentorship training, compliance training program in January. We've got some of the most talented growers from Buffalo, the Bronx, in that group, like people who have won growing competitions, who are known in the community for decades as the best growers. And I want people to understand who these growers are. Like 90% of the weed that's smoked in New York comes from another state.
Wow.
From California, Oklahoma, falls off the back of a truck, whatever. But there's always been this subset, this 10% of growers in Washington Heights who literally, created haze in basements in Washington Heights, apartments in the Bronx, houses in East Buffalo. People have been growing cannabis around the state and risking decades in prison by doing it. Because you got caught with a bag of weed, you might go to Rikers for a day, but you weren't getting locked up for multiple years. If you got caught with a grow, and you can Google this, you can read the New York Times releasing articles like man in Washington Heights caught with 100 plants gets sentenced to 10 years in prison. Like,
wow.
Time if they got caught. And so it's been very difficult. It's taken a lot of time to build trust with these communities. They're the type of guys who wear ski masks on panels when they meet you.
I know who he's talking about. He still wears that ski. He still wears that ski mask. He was
just in the New York Times. He was just in the New York Times. Ashley Southall wrote a story about the New York Growers Cup and highlighted a lot of these legacy growers because they're so talented. He was on his face with the ski mask. He's in the New York Times and he's sharing it all over Instagram. Like, I love it. Like,
also, we had him on our show as well.
That's right. That's true.
He's finally able to share with this community like what he's good at. Like his skill, he had to hide it from his people for so long. And now people are like, yo, you can do this? And he's like, yeah, check it out. Like, this is my genetic. I made this strain. And I love that they're finally able to be proud about what they've accomplished.
Well, not only that, what impressed me about them when we had some legacy growers on the show is their commitment to the quality of the product, which is the same commitment that we want as for the New York industry. That is a commitment to not put out weed that would be harmful to the customer. And telling stories about basically throwing away a whole grow because it had some, I don't know, pesticides or something, not pesticides, but some sort of problem with mold. It was a mold problem. And that just impressed me those are the types of operators that we want to have in the state. People who care about the customer, they care about the community that's going to consume it. And obviously any good business person wants long-term customers, and you can't have long-term customers if you give them products that are harmful. So I wanted that differentiation to be clear, because there are a lot of these gray market interlopers are people who just ran in and saw an opportunity to make some quick money and do not necessarily have any real care or commitment to long-term to the people who are buying this.
It's interesting, in all of the 8 years that I worked on this legislation, I never talked to a person who was a grower. And once it passed, I mean, they all just came. I was like, yo, brother, I didn't even know you. I didn't even think. So you're right. They are undercover. No one really knows who they are. And really, you can walk 5 blocks now, I notice, and find a house in Buffalo where they've been growing for 20 years.
Wow.
They never came up during the course of the negotiations and while we were working on putting this all together. But they are here now. We know who they are, and they're willing to come forward because they know that if they get their product in the store, it's going to sell.
Nice. I think one of the early discussions I remember, and Damian, I think when stuff was like rolling out, was about having I guess CBD folk or hemp farmers kind of teach some of the cannabis growers how to do it. Is that still really a feasible thing that's being done?
Yeah,
go the other way.
We quickly learned that is, as a hemp farmer, I got nothing to teach the collector in the South Bronx. And actually, I'll say this: I was on a panel in Harlem, last summer, where I was interviewing the collector as part of Phil his barbershop thing, and I was interviewing him and hearing him talk about cannabis. I was like, I'm never growing cannabis again. this guy, I'm not growing if he's going in the market. There's no space for me. And so in the program now, the way it's shaped up is the hemp farmers are going to be actually teaching the legacy growers labor law, track and trace, zoning regulations around growing, lighting requirements. There's just all these regulatory requirements and legal requirements that we got to bring them up to speed on. We got to get them to start filing some taxes so they can apply for this license next year. And there's a lot of things that they need to catch up to speed on that the hemp farmers have just been doing because they're farmers who understand how to work with the government. And so we're trying to get that skill set translated over for them. And the last thing I'll say is the best partnerships I've seen between legacy growers and, trying to access the legal market, they find people in their community, family members, friends, whatever, who work in construction or are construction.
Gotcha.
And so if you've done construction work, OSHA, labor laws, contracts, taxes. You can buy a legacy grower with someone who's got a construction contracting firm, and you've got like an actual perfect cannabis business.
It's funny that he says that because that's what inspired me to get Mixie's Blossoms, where I wanted to support those people still coming up who don't understand compliance, don't understand payroll, understand workers' comp, understand community relations. Because At one point, I was a bookkeeper for a construction company. I want to say the concrete company in Long Island. So
Gotcha.
you learn a lot real fast working with both companies and plumbing and electrician and understanding certain guidelines. So next year, I'm going to be actually starting that to work even more in depth along with these agencies, like knowing where they can find the resources, directing them directly where you can go for SBS. I just got my MWB certification and I got it in Harlem and I'm in Southeast Queens.
There you go.
And I was telling people, hey, I got it for free. And I was going into the cannabis industry and seeing how many people was like, oh, I don't know how to do this. It's too much work. And this is this. I don't know where to go. The resources aren't here. And someone from Harlem told me that. I was like, well, I was at Miss Regina's in Harlem Business Alliance doing all of this. I was in SBS. So I put myself for the last year into these different areas to figure out, okay, how do I streamline this even? Because it does become overwhelming. Compliance in New York is a big thing. I used to work in the grocery stores. You know, you getting your fire extinguisher check every 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
I've done parades. I know about permitting. So just to get them at ease and actually seeing someone like them do it and put themselves through it and say, hey, I went through this to get banking. I went through this to get my MWB certification. And this is how we're going to make it easier because, you know, there's so much anxiety around this already for these people. Like, you know, Damian was saying, that guy with the mask, everywhere you see him, he has a mask. And people are not even comfortable even talking about it. It's still such a stigma where people still rolling up and they're looking behind them because they can't believe this is real. So I'm bringing more calming space for them to able to talk, able to exchange and network and work collectively. Because that's the biggest thing with me is making them work with the community and as a community. Because I think that's going to be what's going to set us apart from all the other states.
Beautiful. And Esther, do you have both your city and state MWBE?
I do.
Ooh.
And I have to thank Fernando at SBS for helping me because it was a definitely challenging, but I got it done in 2 days. And because I found out if you do it through the fast track program, you're able to get it done. What took an 8 to 10 week process became an 8-day process.
Beautiful.
One of the things I realized during that process is, oh, I gotta get these paperwork. If I was a little more organized, collecting and knowing all these paperwork, it would have went easier. So I want to even double down, even for the women, to help them. Like, all right, these are all the paperwork. So by the time you get to SBS, you're calm. You already know, okay, I got this, and then it's a smoother transition. Whatever to make it easier. And I know that's not always going to be the case, but wherever I can support that, and CCF can support that, and my team can support that, we're going to do it. And I don't fight, you know, OCM because Damian, no, I'll be like, you got more information? Let me get them papers. All the time. I was talking to him and I was literally like, and he was like, what are you doing with all the papers? I was like, I got boots on the ground. I got to give this to the community. Like, you got a state budget. I don't. This is colored copies. These are colored copies. You know, like 6 cents on the dollar. One sheet.
I love it. Love it. So now I do have to know, Majority Leader. Well, this is a democracy. Now, and knowing that it is coming, it has passed, have those naysayers gotten on board?
Yes, they have gotten on board. They realize how much money can be made and they forget about their objections. Although there are a couple of gentlemen on the Republican side of the aisle whose children have been negatively impacted by bad marijuana because there is marijuana on the streets. And so they want to assume that it's all that way. It's not all that way. And the sooner they learn that, the better off they'll be. But they're still very adamant that it should not happen. And by the way, they're also very adamant that there has to be some sort of way to test if people are driving under the influence, which there is not. The science is not yet. But they are still clamoring to find ways to give police more money to figure out if people are impaired while they're on the road. And, you know, I'm not going to understand what their efforts are, but I often remind them that while you're worried about people who are driving that have access to legal adult use cannabis, For the last 10 years, people have had access to medical cannabis.
Yes.
Worry about how people were driving then. Why are you worried about it now? Because it all comes from a racial perspective.
Yes, and I'll just add, where is the
to help them remember that it's coming. Your thoughts are coming from a racial perspective,
and I'll just add that, like,
not from a safety perspective.
These folks never cared about, you know, a lot of these pharmaceutical drugs and testing people for them if they were driving. You know, like pain medication, the stuff, like opiates. There was no outpouring of like, oh, we need to be able to test because opiates literally make you pass out. There was no one talking to truckers about testing them for that, and there were a lot of car accidents related to opiates. And so, as soon as this plant is legalized, everyone's talking about everyone's gonna be driving out. There's all these assumptions caked into those assumptions, like the majority leader mentioned, is decades of bias that date back to the 1930s and are, you know, it's Ronald Reagan, you know, say no to drugs type stuff mentality. It's not thinking
program.
Exactly.
And
by the way, you know, some of them you are able to talk to some of them and reason with them and show them the data and show them the facts, and you know, it's like a light bulb goes off for them. But some people who are just so deep within their spirit and their heart, believing that there's something that's inadequate and not equal to them, that they cannot compute that. They're not there yet. So there's still an education process that needs to happen with white supremacists, and we're working on it.
Gotcha.
I've definitely been hitting Long Island. A lot of the same
mostly are Long Island.
They're in Long Island. I've been in Babylon with Kimberly Pierre, and they try to do all those type of things. And then I said, well, I was a medical patient and I have my license since 21.
Can I just say a story I heard a few weeks ago in Syracuse? A young Black woman, she might have been in her 40s or whatever. She talked about the first time she got arrested in upstate New York. She was driving. She got pulled over. Cop looks in the window. He sees Dr. Dre, the Chronic, with the weed leaf on it.
Oh, Lord.
And he says, that gives me the right to search your car. Pulled her out and you know, found weed. She wasn't smoking it, but they found weed. And that's how she got her first charge. And I just want to say that that stigma is just like, think about that. She had a CD with a weed leaf on it, and it upended her whole life.
Wow.
And then that cop, obviously, you know, pulled her out and searched her for that. But that bias is just, you know, those interactions with the community, with the government, with police. It's just so it's so deep. And
you can see it being picked up again with bail reform. I mean, bail reform simply means you need to be found guilty before you're incarcerated.
Yes, absolutely.
They have added this whole thing to bail reform like it's just letting criminals out on the street. That's not true.
True.
And every community where it's been happening, crime's gone down. So it's just like people are lying. Basically.
And by the way, not only crime going down, but the state has saved money. Counties have saved money by not locking people up unnecessarily. They're not conservative when it comes to criminal justice. When it comes to lock them up.
That's it. So Night Watchman.
Yeah, we have to start wrapping up, but I'd like each of our guests to just give us a little bit of a closing statement.
Perfect.
And let's start with you, Esther.
Well, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank for the work the OCM, Dashida Dawson, the Majority Leader Peoples-Stokes have done. I have been able to campaign and take your work and just do the boots on the ground because we know you guys can't do it. Support from Air Wellness has been amazing. Kari Edwards from Brooklyn, he's been an amazing job. And just know that you guys have support from Cultivated Community Foundation to continue this work. And education is going to be key in this game. I'm trying to make sure that our community, everyone is buying in. I don't want people losing their night shift privileges. I don't want people I don't want rearrest. I don't want people smoking on federal property and getting arrested for that. So I want to continue the work. Great job, Christopher Alexander, Tremaine. I love her. She has done so much to support the movement of the education, and education is going to be key. And then also for the legacy and the people coming up, we have to do the work also to making sure that our communities understand us and educate them and let them buy in, let them see your face, let them know who you are as a person, because that's another way for amazing buy-in. So thank you for having me. I'm so excited for being here.
Beautiful. Thank you, Queen Mitzi, for sure.
All right. Damian.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Thank you, Esther, Majority Leader. Thank you for listening to the radio show and finding me and putting me in my purpose. I really am so grateful to you for trusting me and believing in me and finding me. But I really want to give a shout out to folks like Esther right now, because before this, I was just an advocate. I was a farmer. I was an activist. I was going to these events, going to these meetings, building community with people. It has been so encouraging to me to see the community that's been built around cannabis across the state. From the event I was at in the Bronx a few weeks ago, the legacy community in Rochester has just been organizing and building strength and community in ways that I never thought possible. And there's so many people like Esther who are doing this work unpaid, volunteer, because they believe in the industry, they believe in their communities, they want to help people. And a lot of ways, I wish we as an agency could do more to support those advocates. And partner with them, but we're kind of limited legally in what we can do. But
color copies,
yeah,
color copies.
I got like 50 activists and advocates from all over the country on my phone every day, telling me what's happening, telling me what people are saying, giving me advice, encouraging me, telling me to keep going. And so I just want to let people know that, like, we see you, the community that we built here in New York around cannabis. Like, we love you. Keep up with the good work. We need you. Don't stop, and thank you.
Beautiful. Majority Leader.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for having me. It was a great discussion, and what a pleasure it is to meet Esther. There are folks like Esther all over the state of New York now that are advocating and educating people, and I'm grateful for that, because there's so much miseducation out there. People give out wrong information about the Office of Cannabis Management on a regular basis. And I love it when there are some immediate people in the vicinity when they say it, that I don't have to always be the one correcting them. People understand this is nice. You can't speed through this. You got to take your time to get it done right. Lastly, I want to say this. Every time I meet a legacy entrepreneur who have, for lack of better words, been the boys on the corner, and selling. And I say to them, they actually say thank you, but I say to them, I did this for you.
Yes.
I don't know you, but I know of you. You live all over the state of New York and in our communities. This legislation is for you.
Yes.
Get yourself right so you can take advantage of it in the way it was designed to. And they're doing that. I love to see the glee in their eye when I say I did this for you and I don't even know them. But that's real, because I did for them. And I can't thank Chris and his whole team, and Damian and Axel and everybody that works with them. I am totally impressed by the work that they're doing. They're building a brand new agency in little or no time and getting the work done. So I would just say to hope that everyone has a really great New Year.
Thank
and
you.
Merry Christmas. And we're going to continue the good work. And that is going to make it right for our people, because it's time.
Absolutely. Well, Night Watchman, I guess you can take us home.
So you have, first of all, thank you, our guests, for just a wonderful show, giving us a chance to close out the year on a real positive, strong note. You've been listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. You can also find us live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And now we're available on most podcast platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. So go check us out. Go on December 29th if you're in New York to, I believe it's 750 Broadway. To the first dispensary opening up. Support, check it out, and know that your purchase is going to support a lot of really good efforts that are going on. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for all of our guests, and for everybody who has contributed to this process. And we can't wait to see what happens in the new year.
That's
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
All right,
everybody.